What's up, you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? We got the border jumpers on the menu.
Yeah, it's not hot button at all.
No, not at all. I'm sure border jumpers was definitely not offensive to anyone in any way, shape, or form either. I did mean that sarcastically. I feel like I need to qualify that all the time now.
I mean, at least once.
At least once.
You got to be able to deny it at some point.
Plausible deniability, right?
Right.
But anyway, looking at the future, immigration has been a thing for a while.
You
as
could say
far
that.
as far as it's what our country was founded on, right? Was
Well,
immigrants.
We all immigrated here.
Yeah,
So
most of us anyway.
Pretty much most. Like how many? 90-some% of us
Yeah.
immigrated here.
Yeah.
You could say we're founded on immigration and the practice of immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes more forcefully than other times.
Yeah.
And sometimes with more opposition than other times. So we're gonna get into a little bit of everything today.
Yeah. Obviously, a hot button topic. And I think everybody can agree, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, that our immigration policies are broken.
Yeah, I think so.
Whether you're, a build the wall kind of guy or, scary open borders kind of crazy communist lib whatever, you agree that what we got going on right now isn't working.
The official policies and the official legalized ways to immigrate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say they're 100%. I don't think you can find anybody who's saying that it is working good right now.
So, hey, that's some common ground, though, right? We can all
Yeah.
agree that this needs to be fixed.
Yes.
And I think if we really get into the nuance of immigration, there's a lot of common ground to be had on here about fixing those things. It seems like these are polar opposite positions that people have on this topic.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just a lot of misunderstanding about what the actual numbers are and what the situation is. I think a lot of people don't understand how difficult it is to immigrate here legally and the reasoning for people immigrating here legally and what the options are to address those issues all the way around.
Yeah, I feel like there's seemingly a ton of information out there and also like no information.
Yeah.
Coming from certain outlets who are just blatantly misrepresenting the actual data. We're going to talk about the data here because math doesn't lie.
Nope.
And we're just going to put it out there, let you decide while also listening to our commentary. And
yeah, absolutely. So I think getting right into it, we should just talk about what the demographics of immigration are in the immigrants are in the United States, and total documented, undocumented make up about 16% of the population. So that's no small part, and this is obviously not natural born citizen immigrants, since we're all immigrants. You go back far enough, but people who weren't born here are naturalized U.S. citizen.
Right. So if you wanted to say like even if that doesn't include like first generation,
no,
or or any of their kids or their families, it's just like
like
if you were not born in the United States, that's 16% of the population.
So if mom's from Mexico and still doesn't speak a lick of English, but you were born here, you're not included in that 16%.
Right. That even that number is somewhat misleading because I think it would be more inclusive to include more people, but to say like first generation, I feel like that's more. I don't know. It represents more of what America actually is.
Right. Yeah. I'd agree with that. But so like
but
16,
still big.
yeah,
Still big for sure.
Yeah, 16% to 350 million people. I'm not good at math, but that's millions and millions of people.
Right. Tens of millions.
Tens of millions. Yes, it is. And then to break that down a little bit, Hispanic, so Mexican, Central American, South American immigrants mostly. That demographic makes up about 44%. A lot of them come to the U.S., seeking a better life, more economic opportunities, seeking to escape, cartels and authoritarian governments. people will walk thousands and thousands and thousands of miles looking for a better life.
Yeah, and they'll also like pay cartels to help them because they're so violent and it's so dangerous to make that path. Like it sometimes costs thousands of dollars to make the trip up here per person sometimes. So it's
with no guarantee that they are going to safely deliver you.
Right. It's they'll get you to the border basically.
Maybe they sell you into the sex trade somewhere along the way too.
Right.
You know.
I don't think anybody's making that journey leaving the land that they've known, that their family has been living on for generations.
Yeah.
Just for fun.
Just for shits and giggles.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's unrealistic.
So obviously there's a lot of people in those regions too who are more middle class, upper class citizens who just do business in the United States, and it makes sense for them to come here or some other career move. Those are usually the people who come here legally. Like I said, this is the entire immigrant population, not all undocumented.
Right.
The next biggest population is Asian. I think that, and I didn't do a deep dive on this, but I think a huge portion of that is Indian. We've had a big influx of more educated Indian immigrants coming here because they can make more money. They got a cheaper education back home, and they can make more money here in the United States. That's become pretty popular.
Way to just group in all the Asians.
Oh my God, yeah. We also have a lot of Asian population, especially here in Minnesota, which is Hmong, Laos, Vietnamese area, and this is these were a lot of refugees. They've been coming here since we destabilized a bunch of shit in Vietnam, 60s and 70s.
That can't be the reason why.
No, it definitely wasn't us, but anyway, so that's a big thing. Obviously, we do a ton of business with China. So a lot of Chinese immigrants as well. The next group is European or white immigrants. That's about 17%. Then after that, it would be black. This would be Haitian or African immigrants, most likely, maybe Jamaican, some of the Caribbean islands who aren't. So anyway, of that 16%, 23% of those immigrants are undocumented, and that's about a little over 11 million people, which is not a small number either.
Yeah.
And most people think that these are all the people, climbing over the border, scurrying up Trump's border slats or wall or whatever he wants to call it.
Impenetrable wall?
Yeah, the impenetrable wall with the floodgates you can crawl under. Yeah, those ones. And that's definitely a sizable portion of those undocumented immigrants, but over 40% of undocumented immigrants came here legally. Most of them came on a plane, which, if you're familiar with planes, they don't stop at walls usually. Don't go through border checkpoints. They came here on a visa, either a work visa or a tourism visa, and then just didn't leave.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge portion of the undocumented immigrants here, and I don't think that gets enough attention. As of now, immigrants fill 18% of total U.S. jobs. That's nearly 30 million jobs, which I guess is probably close to what 16% of the population would be then, right?
Yeah.
Probably a little less.
Pretty much. And those are I think the majority of those jobs are like agriculture, construction, service industry. But obviously, that's a monolith to say that all immigrants are working in those fields. Obviously,
it's a huge part of it. But obviously, like we were talking about, Indian immigrants often come for science and technology and medicine fields and things like that. Most of our science programs over the years has been based on immigration. Our entire NASA program was, German scientists who suddenly got less German names. So we're not above poaching the best and the brightest of other, or we used to not be above poaching the best and the brightest of other countries to fill.
And we still ask for the best and brightest, apparently, or some of us do.
Yeah.
The brain drain. We're still looking for that. Some of us are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that immigrants have long filled in this country. Obviously, Einstein was not from the United States, but
he was not.
But one of the greatest minds of human history, and only here in America to escape persecution in another country, which was Austria, Germany at the time.
Yeah. We can talk a little bit more about that specific instance, but I kind of wanted to look at some of the rhetoric here that is obviously like you just can't not hear about it anymore. It's if you hear or watch anything on Fox News,
I try not to.
I generally see clips. I try to stay informed of everybody's neurotices. So
You're a stronger man than I.
it can be tiring. It can be tiring at times for sure. But Biden's open border is if you want to go further down there, the whole invasion. What? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, the invasion, but the open border thing. This was something I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot to add this into the rhetoric portion of our conversation here. But the open border shit is so dumb because we don't have an open border and people don't understand what open border means, and I think that is important. Like the border between Minnesota and Wisconsin is an open border. Like I can drive over to Wisconsin, I can drive back. The border between states, those are open borders. The border between the United States and Canada is not an open border. You have to stop at a checkpoint. You have to file documentation.
Yeah.
There are border guards. There is a process to crossing that border, a legal process. That means that it is a restricted border. The border, the U.S.-Mexico border, is the furthest thing from an open border you're going to get, and people are like, well, there's not a wall going 4,000 fucking miles through, or endangered environmental species land and shit like that.
Right.
So it's open, and it's like, no, like the main ports of entry and the areas that, can see the highest traffic by trying to go around those are fenced off, walled off, patrolled by, helicopters and jeeps and four-wheelers and
high-tech surveillance equipment,
thermal
imaging shit. Like it's,
guys who peaked in high school, so like
mostly.
So it's not an open border. Now, just because a border is not open doesn't mean that people can't still get past that border.
Oh, certainly.
But saying that it's an open border, it has never been an open border. Nobody's advocating for a completely open border. If you say that we have an open border on any foreign border that's not within the United States, you are a fucking moron and just should never talk again. Please do not ever say we have an open border because I get so sick of hearing that. And if you really do believe we have an open border, I challenge you to leave all of your identification, your cell phone, everything at home, and drive across that border and then go like just 5-10 miles and then turn around and drive back. And if you get stopped at all, that's not an open border. And I just want to see you do that. And if you really believe we have an open border, put your money where your mouth is and go through it twice.
Yeah, not that I'm advocating for anybody to do something completely idiotic. I don't see many of these like border people proving that it's an open border by videotaping. They'd love to videotape and film. I would say videotape, like we're in like 2005.
Hey, we are 90s kids, man.
Right. They love to film migrants coming across the border, sometimes illegally by climbing over the fence, whatever it may be. But not once do they ever show themselves. Doing what you said.
Yep.
And just being like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, they're just letting them all through is what they say. It's like, all right, well, you've got the complexion for it. You should give it a try, man. Anyway, sorry to derail that. I get so annoyed with the open border rhetoric because it's so dumb. It is so dumb.
It is at best misleading and at worst just a complete misinformation, disinformation campaign. So, I don't know why anybody. I don't know who defends that, but somebody must, if they're willing to put that on Fox News, just as their slogan for the day or something.
I mean, there's also a war on Christmas, according to Fox News.
Well, it's if there's not a war on something, do we even know how to deal with it?
No, that's how we deal with it.
Not to say that that's a good way to deal with things, but does America know how to deal with anything unless we start a war with something?
Are you a Futurama fan?
A little bit, yeah.
Do you ever see any of the Christmas episodes with Robot Santa?
Probably not.
Oh, anyway, so in Futurama, they built a robot Santa that was supposed to be able to go like deliver toys to kids all around the world, and
Sure.
like built in like a naughty nice list, like a real Santa, except they like tuned him so everybody, like nobody could be nice, like everybody was bad, and
I
he
assume
just
that was a Bender move.
it was not Bender, but they fight him every Christmas episode. Christmas is this horrific occasion that everybody needs to hide indoors, which I feel that like Christmas is awful, but
It's awful.
I'd like to hide indoors from Christmas from
I
the
like to
onslaught
sit
of
indoors in a blanket and in front of my TV or computer and just watch Futurama. No.
yeah, there we go.
just watch shows all day. It's so cool.
But anyway, so the robot Santa just goes around and tries to kill everybody who's been naughty. So that's why they gotta hide indoors, and it's like every time I hear "War on Christmas," I just picture like evil robot Santa with a rocket launcher, like flying around the world.
Yeah, that's I feel like that's appropriate. And now that you're described that, I feel like I do recall that figure in my mind.
I can relate just about everything in this world to Futurama at some point or another.
Well, it is a really long running show, and it has a lot of cultural references.
And it's Matt Groening, however the hell you say his name, you know, who's also The Simpsons, and The Simpsons is notoriously prophetic, right? So
yes.
All right, moving on, back to immigration.
Yes, back to immigration. So when I was doing some research, I wanted to get a holistic view. That's what I try to do every time is look at where we started from and how we got to where we are today. So first thing I wanted to do was read off a quote here from somebody, and you may or may not. I changed a few of the words. So here it goes. It's, why should Texas, founded by America, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Mexicanize us instead of us converting them, and will never adopt our language and customs any more than they can acquire our complexions. So I changed that to be relevant for today. Doesn't that kind of sound like somebody could have just put that out there?
Yeah, it does. I do certainly feel like this was definitely a slightly pre-Alamo quote, though.
You're getting closer. Actually, so I'm going to change it back. So the original quote. Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of us anglifying them, and will never adopt our language and customs any more than they can acquire our complexions? Quote by none other than Benjamin Franklin. So
good old
going
Benji.
all the way back to before we were even a country, or like right as we're becoming a country, one of our most prominent figureheads, who is widely recognized as one of the better ones.
Yeah.
Like still spewing out some of this stuff. That's the exact same verbiage, this exact same shit that gets spewed out today. But about Germans. So it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Germans are white people too, right?
Well, but they're a different kind of white people.
But they weren't white, according to Benjamin Franklin back in the day. And so I wanted to bring this up specifically just to show that throughout our history, and I've got a couple more examples, this type of rhetoric has always been there. And this is this rhetoric about
the others.
Latin America is just today's version of it. There's nothing new, unique, or like impactful or truthful about it.
No, these people have no original thoughts ever.
Benjamin Franklin, like Trump is ripping off Benjamin Franklin trope. So,
also, I think it's hilarious that this is a Benjamin Franklin quote, and then he if only he'd lived long enough to see the 1940s and the fact that
sorry, what?
So the 1940s roll around. Now Benjamin Franklin's all like, the Germans don't have the complexion of us England.
You said Benjamin Franklin?
Yeah.
Is around in the 1940s?
No, if he had lived till then.
All right. I was like, what?
If he had lived till the 1940s, because it's like this quote didn't age very well. Because then they started a whole war about the white Anglo-Saxon race, like Aryan race. That was their whole big thing. So they apparently viewed themselves as pretty white.
Right. Yeah, you could say that. They consider themselves to be the most white.
The whitest.
For a certain period of time. So, I mean, in one way, Benjamin Franklin is extremely wrong and bigoted in this statement, but in one way, he's the most correct anyone's ever been in the 1700s.
Like, them Germans, we might want to keep an eye on them.
And this is coming from somebody who's like over 50% German. I think this is hilarious. But I also I didn't, as somebody who's very plainly a white guy, it was sort of weird to me to see somebody
of your complexion,
of political authority at some point in time being like, oh no, somebody like you, if you were living in that time period, would not be considered to be in the in group or just American.
I mean, and we know they always bring up the Irish when they talk about immigrants. And the Irish were slaves, which they were not slaves. That's a whole different topic. But no, they weren't.
Indentured servitude.
Yeah. Which is different.
It's different. Still not great.
It's not great, but different. It's not chattel slavery.
Got a few more rights.
Yeah. There's an end in sight to it as well.
Usually,
your kids generally aren't born into it. You're not technically owned by other people.
Right.
But
speaking of the Irish, that kind of brings me into the 1840s and right around when Abe Lincoln, good old Abe, was president. A party that has a longer name but became known as the Know Nothings around the 1840s. They were able to endorse and get over 100 senators and around 7 governors elected in about a decade or so, whatever that time frame is. Their platform, you might recognize some parts of it, favor of mass deportation of beggars and criminals, i.e. Irish people, very anti-Catholic, i.e. some Irish people. They wanted mandatory Bible readings in school. And they were very much on the opposite side of Abe Lincoln. He thought they were ridiculous. And Abe actually was a big immigration guy to a certain extent. Mostly, though, I think it had to do with the Civil War, and that we needed more people to do the fighting for us.
And it's easier to send the immigrants to go shoot and die. You don't miss them as much when they're gone.
Yeah, it's definitely a theme in that around war periods, immigration laws get much less enforcement, a little bit more lax.
Well, I mean, and even civil rights laws, like you look around the Second World War, and we started giving African Americans opportunities in the military that they weren't, quote unquote afforded before, and they weren't great opportunities, but they still had, they would have never have dreamed of putting a bunch of African Americans in airplanes and letting them go be fighter pilots until it's like, we kind of need some more fighter pilots, and we'll let these guys go be cannon fodder for a while, and we're gonna be bad fucking ass at this, and and then you get the Tuskegee Airmen. And
I heard a statistic that, and this could be wildly inaccurate, mind you, but I heard that up to potentially 20,000 Americans died in training to become pilots in World War II. That many people died in training just because they knew it was dangerous, but they desperately needed pilots, so they didn't really care that so many people were dying, because if you got a couple out of that group, it was still worth it in their minds.
So, kind of cool story. Not cool is probably the wrong word for it. But long story short, my sort of used to be stepdad, who was never actually my stepdad, but I consider my stepdad, who is now was never married to my mom. That's but is now married to another woman who is from Canada, and she's very she's French Canadian, but her mom or her grandma is from England. You feel like you're talking to the Queen when you hang out with her. It's pretty cool. And she's this 90 something year old lady, so she was a teenager during the Second World War.
Oh, sure.
And in England, so she was there during
not around when dinosaurs were
around,
no, just World War II.
Just World War II. Yeah, okay. She was 16, 17, and she had a job at one of these airfields as a radio operator, talking to the pilots as they're coming in. And she's basically my job, and this was training stuff and whatnot. She's basically my job was to make them not realize that they were about to die. Like when they were like, "Yep, they're not going to land this plane." Just talk to him nice, make him feel good going down. Like that was most of her job. And I was like, and she's talking about it all cheery. And I was like, man, that is fucking grim as shit.
Yeah, that's pretty fucked.
Yeah. So I believe your statistic. Okay. I mean, like that's where I was getting at with that. Is it sounds like that was basically her whole job. It was just like, yeah, you're doing great. You maybe should have put the landing gear down, but we'll worry about that later.
I'm sure that's exactly what it was. They just forgot to put the landing gear down.
A little more flaps might have helped because she didn't know how to fly a plane, so there's nothing she was gonna do. They're like, yeah, we need the people who know how to fly the plane on the radio to actually help the people who might survive this. So we're
gonna send you the ones that are.
Yeah. You got that nice teenage girl voice. It makes the kids feel good.
Yeah, that's something. Nothing like the 40s, man. All right, and so that's kind of that shows you that. Since basically the beginning of our country, in the beginning of time, there's been this anti-immigrant sentiment that really you can tell, like the wording, the verbiage, the sentiment has not changed since then. And what do you know? We're all still here. Yep. We have a country that's supposedly a superpower, right? The superpower of the world.
Oh, that's not supposed. I mean, we got the biggest bombs, so
right. Well, yeah, we got the biggest swinging dick. That's for damn sure. What do you know? We've survived. We've made it to this point, and from all time, people have been spouting this type of stuff, and we still somehow make it through. And still become stronger because of it. So, to all you people, I don't think there's many of you listening that think this type of thing. But
probably not a whole lot of fans that are on the other side of this issue. But
no, I would think not. But just to just to say that nothing has changed.
No, never does.
Speaking of nothing changes, I wanted to have one more quote, one very recent and one quite popular. I'm sure you will know exactly who I'm referencing here. When Mexico sends their people, they're not sending their best. They are sending people who have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with them. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They are rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
So we're talking about the Trump administration, right? Like
no, that was Biden. Actually,
when they come. Oh, I thought we were describing the Trump administration. Like when they send their people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people who have lots of problems. Clearly,
right.
The Trump administration. They had criminals. Clearly,
yeah. That's true.
I'm pretty sure we could argue there's some rapists in there.
Right. Definitely some sexual assault.
Right at the top. Definitely some sexual assault.
Yeah.
And some I would assume. I can't even say that with a straight face.
I mean, his sister that just died, she probably wasn't as much of an asshole as Trump.
That's true. That's true. Some I assume are good people.
Right? So obviously that was Trump. Trump's basically right as he was beginning his campaign for the 2016 election. Just hit the people with that banger, and we're gonna tell you the data to show how none of those claims are correct. It's wildly racist statement to say something like that, and for people to claim that he's not talking about Mexicans or like illegal or immigrants coming from Latin America it's completely delusional to say. So, what are some of the statistics, Jordan?
Well, obviously, I think thugs and rapists, that was like thrown around or something along those lines from the great man you just quoted here.
Right.
And so, violent criminals, this is rhetoric you hear all the time, that they're all these, illegals, the undocumented, I try not to use that word, but undocumented
Since
immigrants.
1840, you've been hearing about it.
Yep. They're criminals, and aside from entering the country illegally, which is really generally the only crime they end up committing,
right?
U.S. born citizens, so us,
right.
We're 2.5 times more likely to commit violent crime, to commit property crime, and to commit drug crime, and that's not an average. That's each one of those individually.
Sure.
Than undocumented immigrants, averaged out. It was about 40% more likely than legal immigrants, and those get a lot closer on certain ones and a lot further apart on others. But legal immigrants are less likely to be criminals, and undocumented immigrants are a lot less likely to be criminals. And there's a lot, like, if you just think about it common sense wise for about 2 fucking seconds, it makes a lot of sense. Like, you may have spent a lot of money, you definitely risked your life, you did a lot of work to try to get here,
Right.
and you don't want to do that again, and you don't want to go back to where you came from, because obviously you did all that work to try to get here. So what you're going to do is keep your head down and try to make sure that nobody pays attention to you ever, and a good way to do that is just not commit crime.
Clearly the negatives are vastly overblown, but I'm sure there's some positives that are underreported, right?
Yeah, because, I mean, the other big thing is that they don't pay taxes, and they just are a drain on our society.
Right. Besides the people that have been here for decades, that have been paying taxes for decades. Besides those people.
And this is another thing. Goes back to the rhetoric that they get all of these free services. Like,
oh my gosh.
they get to vote and they get to collect Social Security, and it's like, you need a Social Security number to collect Social Security, you dumb fuck. And if you're not documented, you don't have a Social Security number, because your Social Security number is the fact that you are a...
Right. Who do you think is stealing more identities to get a Social Security number? Migrants from Latin America, or white people, or people that are already living in America?
Right. How many people just don't let the government know that grandma died so they can keep collecting their Social Security check? Like,
right.
It's not the immigrants, you know?
There's basically, they get no healthcare benefits other than access to emergency care. They don't get a check in the mail. Like, they don't get any welfare checks. They don't even get barely any food assistance. I think some people can get WIC if you're like a mother carrying an infant. Like that,
or if you have a child born in the United States that is technically a citizen, I think there's
you can
some...
get WIC. I think that's basically the most like tangible.
And I don't even know if they can get that. I know that it's definitely difficult. And then a lot of people...
Yeah, I'm sure it is quite difficult still. It's not like, here's your WIC card, and like we're going to deposit it just to everybody who comes like walking
And
through
it's something
the
you
door.
hear all the time. It's like they just walk in and they just write them a check for $473,000. And, you know,
like where's that coming out of the budget? If you thought that was a real budget line item, don't you think Republicans in Congress like every year would be like, this is how much we're giving to immigrants.
Right. Yep.
We need to stop this. We need to balance the budget. But you've never once ever heard that come from anybody's mouth.
Nope.
It's not real. It's never been real. It's absolutely asinine that this gets like, put out as mainstream fact.
And then even when you think about the fact that they can go to the emergency room, because the emergency rooms have to accept anybody who comes in, which is a good thing.
Yeah, obviously.
They still are going to avoid doing that, because they don't know if when they leave that emergency room, they're leaving it, you know, the back of an ICE van headed for the border or something. So, like, you know, they avoid using any of these public services in many cases at all costs.
The only public service that I was able to find, and that from my research, other people were able to find that is really the actual drain on the economy, is schooling for children.
Yep.
But which they easily pay back for once they're no longer children and start entering the economy.
They grow up and become working adults, and pay taxes.
Yes, even if they even if their earnings aren't being reported, which a lot of them are actually still being reported, even though they don't have a Social Security number. They still have like a worker ID number or something along those lines.
There's a way you can pay taxes without giving your ID, because the IRS is all about like getting their money. Remember, they caught Al Capone for not paying taxes. It wasn't none of the other shit. Like it was like, we don't care how much illegal shit you did to get the money. We care that you didn't pay your taxes on the illegal money you got. Yeah. And so there is ways that immigrants can pay income tax and all of that to the IRS without having, you know, your Social Security number or your normal stuff. Of course. And they do it. And they do it again in a lot of cases because they're trying to avoid getting caught
and deported.
Exactly. So in 2013, which I guess isn't like the most recent, but I'd assume it's substantially more now, they paid $11.6 billion in state and local taxes. That was $7 billion in state
but
Uh-huh.
we can all agree that clearly.
But anyway, yeah, that's less immigration. But that's how I assume that came in. I didn't see the breakdown of how
Sure.
they were paying the
Gotcha.
property tax.
Right.
But that's according to whatever study it was I looked up, and I promise I do double check these things most of the time. In 2019, so that was just state and local stuff. I found another source that said in 2019, $6 billion was paid in federal taxes and $12 billion into Social Security by undocumented immigrants, which is a huge number. And they can't collect Social Security,
Right.
so
they pay into all these benefits that they'll never ever receive, or if they do receive it, it'll be like very minimal because half the time
it wasn't reported that way,
reported properly, or you know. It takes forever to become a citizen.
Yeah.
So like the chances of you getting deported in like 20 years are pretty high. If you can make it that long, like there's still, you could still be here for 20 years, working for 20 years, pay taxes for 20 of those years, and still never become a citizen, and still never receive a dollar of those benefits.
Yeah. So any of the drain that comes out of education, you can arguably say they pay back probably tenfold in Social Security.
Like it's like a couple $1,000s per child, over the course of like a year. So like this is this easily pays it back, and then by them becoming grown-ups and getting education and become a functional member of society, they
pay
contribute
it back again. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that's worth noting is education is an investment. Like, how rich people always say you got to spend money to make money. In a society, that's where you spend money to make money. That is your investment. Education always pays back exponentially.
Even though college has been fucked, it generally you still make more money than the cost of college.
Right, and I'm not even talking about like our student loan thing. I'm talking about from a government perspective. Every time that the tax money is invested in improving education, sending kids, to school for free, is socialism.
Free school lunches. How dare they get a solid meal?
Every time you invest in things like that, anytime you invest in housing and food security, anything that makes people more prosperous, it always returns dividends.
Well, right. If you look at like specifically like the detaining of illegal immigrants in basically what it amounts to a prison system that we currently have, I heard it costs over $300 a day for one detainee.
Oh, I believe it. That even sounds low to me, honestly, but probably, yeah.
The United States has tried and funded community outreach programs where they work with local communities and basically fund local groups to give people housing and food and like shelter and all this stuff. That was like less than $100 a day.
Right.
And they're not stuck in a prison.
Right.
And they can potentially
go to work,
go to school, and contribute
taxes.
to society and pay taxes. So it's literally by us being like crazy, like authoritarian and like, everybody who came over here illegally needs to be jailed up. Or even if they don't come over illegally, but they're just waiting to like have like an immigration court like determine their status, they could still be detained.
Yep.
They don't even have to do anything illegal. They could have just given themselves up, got to the border security, and
claimed like refugee
asylum,
and
they could be detained for however, I actually don't know like what the average sentence or what the average time is
either,
but it's costing taxpayer dollars to do nothing, when we could be
doing something
tenfold less by actually helping these people. It's so mind-boggling.
Well, it's
to
the
me.
same thing with homelessness. Like,
Yeah.
like we could just literally, like, the solution to homelessness is just give them houses. Like, that is not houses, but like give them housing.
Come on, tiny homes are a crazy thing right now.
Yeah,
you don't think like a tiny home would make like just change the life of any homeless person?
Oh, it absolutely would. It absolutely would. I was thinking more like apartment type living situations.
Yeah.
Something a little bit more condensed and cost effective. But
sure.
Whatever it is, like this has been done. And it's cheaper. It is cheaper than having homeless people be homeless, and all of the cost drain on society and the cost drain
Much
for law
less
enforcement.
the human suffering element.
Right. You just take it all the ethics and the humanity part out of it, and just be like, look at it.
Utilitarian aspect.
Look at it on the checkbook aspect, and it's like it would cost you less to just not be a massive douchebag and give the people a house.
Right.
And you're like, nah, they need to suffer more.
No,
like,
they need to get some bootstraps.
yeah, they need to, like, I picked myself up from a cushy middle class lifestyle to have a cushy middle class lifestyle. And if they can't do the same.
I know that's just like the prevailing problem with America generally. And that's like what progressives like us just like it frustrates us so much is the antithetical way that we run this country. But
it's like, I will pay more to make other people's lives more miserable.
Right.
Like that is like that should be our new slogan for America.
Yeah, it really should be. It really should be.
We'll pay extra to make your life suck more.
But so I haven't. It looks like you have in here that by providing a path to legalization, basically we can increase our revenue brought in through taxes by $2 billion state and locally, and then an additional $5 billion in federal.
Yep.
So like we're talking like this is like $20 billion, 20 to $30 billion a year from undocumented to potentially become documented immigrants. So this is a pretty massive amount of dollars that like over the course of a decade, like we're talking about like that's close to paying off all the like student loans, the student loan plan that was so expensive. Like this could have paid for that if we had initiated something like that in 2000. Like we could have paid for the whole plan, but instead we were like, nah, let's not do reform.
Yeah, just think we could have made immigrants legal and made them pay for a college. How awesome would that have been?
I know, it would have been amazing.
So I guess it's a
or for them to be in America.
Yeah,
and
like they're already here. Just like let them be here normally. Then like stop making them have to look over their shoulder all the time, and just let them pay more taxes. Like why is it like we can just let them pay more taxes?
It's the same argument for like legalizing marijuana, right? Like people are already smoking weed, and so you might as well get a tax benefit from them doing that thing, which is a much worse reason to legalize something. It's just for like marijuana is like the dumbest thing, comparing to immigration and people like putting their lives on the line to come to a place. Like that is a way more valid reason to legalizing something.
Yeah.
So like the fact that we can't draw that conclusion, there's got to be some massive amounts of cognitive dissonance that is just beyond the realms of like comprehension.
Oh, I've tried comprehending it, believe me, and I've not gotten any closer.
No, yeah, I would agree.
So then the question is, why are there so many undocumented immigrants? Like, why don't they just come here legally?
Well,
if it's that,
because they're brown. I mean, step one.
Yeah, definitely, definitely an obstacle. If they could just be a little white or get that Michael Jackson treatment before they come up and knock on the border. But that is a good question, because you always hear that rhetoric too, is, I wouldn't have a problem with them if they just came here legally.
Right. They're criminals because they come illegally. Well, that's because being here legally is basically impossible.
Yeah. It's like you're probably better off playing the lottery, honestly.
Yeah,
state
it
lottery.
Literally is a lottery.
It is actually a lottery.
There's actually a lottery to whether or not you can come legally or not. You are playing the lottery.
Which is so fucked up. Just like,
do you want to come to a country that is saying like, there's basically no unemployment right now, but there's job openings everywhere. But in order to get put into a situation where you're working a minimum wage job, you have to win the lottery first.
You have to literally win.
And then you get put into the lowest strata of people in the country.
Yeah, win the lottery so you can come work below minimum wage jobs.
Right, at Taco Bell.
So that's part of it. And then there's tests you got to pass. Then even if you do win the lottery, even if you're trying to get through here,
is there tests of just getting like a working visa and like all that shit?
I don't know about.
I mean, obviously for citizenship.
For citizenship, there's a test anyway.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know about a working visa. I fortunately haven't had to go through the immigration process, because I probably wouldn't be here doing this with you if I had to. But there is. I know the citizenship test is something that most citizens can't pass. I don't even know if I can pass it.
I bet we could pass it. We should take the test.
We should take the test one of these times. I mean, I'd feel pretty confident that I've got a better chance than most.
Yeah. I mean, for how much time that we spend on this fucking thing that gets almost nowhere anytime, we gotta be able to do something.
Yeah. I think that'd be a good one. We should do that one of these times. All right. So it's funny because it hasn't always been this way. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, but
it used to be a lot easier. And a lot of these like ways to become a legalized status, right? If you're married, if you become married to a citizen,
right.
or if you have a family member that's already in legal status or citizen, or if you get like a work visa, that's how you can become legalized. And those used to be a heck of a lot easier until the early 90s when Bill Clinton had to be all Bill Clinton-y and bring up some Arkansas to the national level and make it much more difficult and much more penalizing to just basically try to do something that is like that.
Yeah, which I still am not convinced Arkansas is a real place. Like that's my conspiracy theory. Yeah. Arkansas doesn't exist. It's like birds.
Yeah. I happen to know one person who lives in Arkansas. Yeah. Though I've never actually met him in person.
I'm aware of a person who exists that says he's from Arkansas
a lot, but I've never actually met him. So
it's like I'm pretty sure I've even driven through Arkansas and I have no recollection of it whatsoever. But I've been in that area. I've driven through like a ton of. I remember driving through Kansas, but not Arkansas. Like. Right. And then and they were like a big part of the Civil War, or like an original part of the Civil War. Like they were part of the Confederacy, but nobody ever talks about that or their contributions or what they. I mean, again, we talk about Kansas, bleeding Kansas, all that kind of stuff, like leading up to the Civil War. Arkansas, I swear to God, it's a figment of our imagination. It's like the 13th floor in a building,
It's there, but the number doesn't actually correlate.
Anyway, sorry, off topic again. Back to where we were. So prior to the 1920s, speaking of open borders, we had one for the most part, right?
Yeah, I mean, like we said before, unless you were Chinese or under any sort of ethnic group that we deemed not worthy, basically pretty open.
Yeah, like you literally just got on a boat and came here, and they're like, "Welcome to America."
Welcome to America.
And then that changed. It changed in large part because of the types of people who decided to stop immigrating here and the types who started immigrating here. Because through the first 100 years of our country, it was a lot of European immigrants. Obviously,
oh yeah, it was like massively European. And then as time passed and got into the 1800s, you get massive Asian immigration. And then obviously it changes kind of throughout the decades, but it definitely is less European now.
And when that started changing, that's when we started putting in immigration caps. That's when we started putting in various tests. That's when we started putting in sponsorship programs, which means that somebody else has to legally immigrate here, and then be like, yeah, that dude's with me, and then they have to go through a whole process like that. That's a long.
Yeah, I just love it when people are like, oh, well, my family came here legally. Well, it's like, do you know what that process was? For them? Do you? Because
they drunkenly stumbled off a boat.
I have no
1890.
Clue. I assume that my family just walked over on a boat, or walked across the little plank to get to Ellis Island. Or probably not even Ellis Island, just some other place.
Yeah.
But I have no clue. I would never be like, "Oh, my family came here legally." That's a ridiculous statement to make.
And legally, according to who? Did the Indian or the natives sign off on it? Where they're like, "Yeah, we'll stamp your permit." Like, no, we stole it from somebody else, and then we're like, "Then you came here legally."
Besides that, point, which is just always you can always go back to that, but.
And then again, back with the lotteries and all that kind of stuff, there's a ton of bureaucracy that goes into that. And then even the asylum, the refugee stuff, that should be pretty cut and dry, and it's not. For Cubans
Yeah,
ro-
Cubans, yeah.
rowing across the
Right. They're like, we're gonna shoot that boat if you don't turn around.
Mhm.
Like you can't even make it to a spot where
But
you
like
could.
this is what's crazy because this is the policy. Like we recognize Cubans as asylum, as refugee, if they set foot on
Right.
shore. If their ankle is still in the water and they get caught, back to Cuba.
Back to Cuba. Yeah.
And-
Right. And that's part of the, like when people say like, oh, Trump had less illegal immigration than Biden did. I think it's mostly because Trump's policies basically shooed them away instead of giving them the opportunity to claim asylum,
Right.
like massive amounts. And I think Biden is trying to not do that as much.
Yeah.
I still know that he basically has most of the same policies
Right.
that were
Oh my
left
God.
over from Trump. I don't think much has actually changed policy-wise as far as immigration goes, but everybody talks about it.
And and Trump's so proud of his stance on immigration, but Obama still deported way more
Right.
people than he ever did. So this is not.
what was his nickname? Deport Obama, Deport Obama or something.
I don't remember a nickname, but I do know that he was like the deporter in chief for sure.
That's
like,
what it was. Yeah,
Was it?
Deporter in chief?
Yeah,
that was the nickname.
he had the buses running constantly, sending them back to where they came from, which
he
is
did deport the most.
which is not something to be proud of, but it's just funny
No.
when it's like, Trump tries to like brag about how many like people he deported, and it's like you still didn't beat the black guy you were mad about being president. So
Even like if you're taking an average year, because obviously Obama was there for 2.
yeah, per year, like Obama put up some
Crushed,
serious
absolutely crushed
on
Trump.
the deportions. Yeah.
So, but he's the best president. He's done the best things, and nobody's ever been better than him in any way.
Hey, and you know what? I'll give Trump credit that he didn't deport as many people. Like I
Yeah.
think that's a good thing.
That's a
Not
good
that
job.
it's not for lack of trying.
It's
if we're
more
if we're
incompetency that led
yeah,
to that.
just pure incompetency. But yeah, you look at like this is not a Democrat or Republican thing. Like these
No,
assholes on both
obviously,
sides have been doing this.
you
Like
look
said
at Bill
Clinton.
Clinton.
Yeah.
Good thought right there.
Yeah. And then the funny thing is Reagan was honestly like this feels bad in my mouth.
Yeah, you're about to do something that I never thought you would do.
All right. One of the things that wasn't totally horrible that Ronald Reagan did was give current undocumented immigrants a path to citizenship, because he saw that we had a need to do something, and that was, I mean, it was like one of those things. It's kind of like the forgiving student loan thing. It's like you're already here, we'll just give you a pretty easy path to citizenship.
I didn't know that he actually gave a path to citizenship. I thought he basically just like was like, "Yep, if you're here, like we're just gonna like you're good."
Yep, that's basically what he did. He just signed it off. It's like,
And
you're
then
here.
also created a bunch of laws that made it more difficult for anybody to come here legally.
Right, yeah, after that. But he as far as if a Republican did that today, running for president,
Yeah, I don't think you'd be out faster than Mitt Romney.
man, they'd be rhino hunting for sure, and yeah.
They'd be going on safari.
So like that's just crazy. Like Reagan was better on immigration than Obama was, if we're really if we're looking at it that way, at least for the ones who are already here.
Yeah, I mean, Obama did have DACA, so
Yeah.
that's a bright spot on an overall pretty blemished, stat record book.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's like saying this is definitely, when we say it's a both sides issue, and normally it's like but it's not. But this one kind of is in a lot of cases.
Kinda is, yeah.
Yeah. So and that's the thing is, like, again, deporting people, like we're talking about, housing them costs a lot of money, and we got to house them for a while before we can deport them, because they get their day in court
Right,
and
detaining
stuff.
them. They've got whole prison industries. It's like a prison industrial complex, just extended a little bit for detaining undocumented immigrants.
So obviously you need a lot of like workers to do all that stuff. So that's why you got ICE. And ICE costs us, their budget's $8 billion a year. And then
Doesn't Homeland spend even more than like any other Customs and Border Protection?
Yeah, Customs and Border Protection is $25 billion a year. And obviously Customs and Border Protection does more than, like, ICE is pretty focused on just, trying to shoot Mexicans on the border. But
I mean, like the Coast Guard does a lot of for border protection too. So I mean, that's probably not included in this.
Probably
number.
not. No, because that would be a defense budget thing. I think.
Right.
I don't think that'd be Customs and Border. That would be Coast Guard. So like I mean, but right there, that's over 30 billion to 35, close to $35 billion just in those two agencies
I think you
alone.
could easily say, and that's not included. That's just federal programs. It's not including state Lokis or whatever. So we're talking 50 billion plus.
Oh, easily.
Spent. So there's a net 70 billion plus that could be made / saved likely.
By not doing what we're doing.
By changing our mind, by doing something a little bit different.
But then when we finally do get to deport them, it's not like you just get to like just toss them over the border and be like, good luck. Like you got to bring them back places, and there's a whole process, and it's like.
Do they bring them back like all the way? Like if they came from Guatemala?
I guess I don't know.
I guess I don't know either.
Because I mean, I'm sure like Mexico would be like, you're not just dropping them off back here in Mexico. I'd assume.
I think they would be pretty upset about that. Yeah. Just like everybody in New York. And, everybody's upset about Florida and Texas shipping migrants. Which, to be fair, a lot of those migrants are like they don't want to be stuck in El Paso.
No,
or they don't want to be stuck in Houston or Miami. Like they have places they want to go. They have like family in different areas of the country.
Absolutely.
So like a lot of those people like signed a release to go on the bus. I heard.
Yeah. Well,
because they want to go to like Chicago. Like
but
they're like, oh, where do you want to go that's not here?
Yeah.
Like, oh, Chicago sounds good. It's better than here. Yeah. We're gonna be on the street in a few weeks, so like I'm sure that's got to be better.
Yeah. But when they do deport them, it's 10 to 20 grand a person.
Yeah, that's
a
lot of money.
Expensive.
I'll take if we just let's say we don't do that.
Yeah.
I'll take a couple K's off that 10K.
Yeah.
If we just change our minds.
Right. Yeah. You think there's 11 million undocumented immigrants. That would be over $200 billion that it would cost to try to deport it. That's if we could find them all. You know what I mean?
That's like if we already had 11 million people in custody today. Not even that they're like spread across a giant fucking country.
Yeah, so like it's ridiculous on its face. It's impractical, and we spend tons and tons of money.
It would take us multiple years. I'm betting we're easily over half a $1 trillion to deport all those people that are just paying taxes,
and that's not counting the loss. Yeah, and that's not counting the loss to society, like the economic loss, because these people
they fill a role in society.
Yeah,
clearly,
there's a lot of benefits to immigration, right? I mean, like there's replacement theory, which is a cringe thing for me every time I hear somebody bring that shit up.
Apparently it's mainstream on Fox News. It's like Tucker Carlson approved replacement theory. Like this is like Trump has not said the words.
Well, Tucker's not on Fox
when he was.
Yeah, okay.
It was very recently that he got kicked off.
I know.
So
it was a great day. I enjoyed that so much.
It was
like,
day.
Wow, hell's
now you don't have
over.
somebody like him just like spouting off like the buzzword that will rile up every person who like just lives their life thinking that every immigrant like comes across with fentanyl and guns and is going to kill and rape everybody, when like 90% of fentanyl that gets brought into America is brought over through like a shipment of some sort, like a legal shipment, just like hidden, or brought over by Americans.
Right.
So like there's less than 10% of fentanyl that comes across through migrants that are legally crossing the border.
And probably most of those are like the cartel paying their way to get across the border.
Like,
and it's like, this is what you got to do for us.
Right,
yeah.
We're gonna bring you to the border, and then you cross the border, and then you meet us with this So like people, I don't think migrants are like, like I'd really love to bring some fentanyl over with me.
Yeah, it's just
like that just seems like a good time.
The balloon up the butt is just one of my favorite pastimes. So,
I mean, some people,
it's there's the number probably isn't 0, but it's very low.
It's a non-zero number for sure.
But yeah, so like replacement theory, for those of you who don't know, fortunate enough to not know, this is where boomers are afraid that we're not going to pay their Social Security much longer because there's not enough of us, is really what it comes down to. And the capitalists overlords are afraid that they're not going to have enough low value, quote unquote, low value workers, to build their shit and do their jobs for them.
Yeah, it's also it's partly like around the thought that if we just bring in more migrants and we allow them to vote, then they're going to replace the conservative vote. When you literally can't vote if you're.
We're talking about two different replacement theories.
Oh, is there?
Sorry.
This was like the part of it. I thought it was like one big theory of like. There's like a voting, they're going to replace us, and instead of like wanting to defeat our policies, they're just going to bring more people in to vote against us.
I have heard about this, and maybe I used the wrong terminology here when I was writing shit down.
What you said sounds like replacement theory, kind of. Too.
Yeah, well, like the thing is that birth rates are low, right, and we're not replacing the amount of people we need in the population to make the population
in most
function.
Western countries, that's the case, including the United States to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, and the only place in the world, or the only region in the world that birth rates are actually declining right now, is Europe in certain places
And Japan, but
Japan's
basically a Western,
right,
culturally,
but like the United States, I mean, there's still 2,500 people a day more being born than die. We're still growing. We're growing slower than we have in a very long time, but we are still growing, and.
True.
And I don't know. I haven't looked at the numbers. I don't care that much. I think that less people's probably a good thing. Personally, we do sort of suck.
Well, for the world as a whole, I think we could say that. I think we could say that we don't need another 7 billion or a couple billion or 1 billion people necessarily. I mean, resources are strained, and mostly, I don't want to say that resources are strained. I think the problem is the distribution of those resources is flawed, and so now we have a straining of resources in the places that need it.
Yep.
But to your next point about jobs here and like, oh, they're gonna take our jobs. If you're a South Park fan, best episode of immigrants coming or citizens from the future get a time portal and they come back in like 2000 to get jobs because there's no jobs in the future
because we've created this dystopian nightmare for them.
Right, and so back to the pile. Love it. I love it.
That's a good one.
South Park, it hits good. But basically, the jobs that most undocumented workers are replacing are jobs that do not require a high school diploma. So we're talking about, according to whatever statistics, this is where I got this, around 10% of Americans don't have a GED or better.
Right.
So, like, we're talking about, if you were going to make the argument, there's only 10% of Americans that are working these type of jobs. So
right.
It's a tiny, tiny portion. It's basically a single-digit amount of jobs that are being
taken.
And
even a lot of them aren't working these types of jobs. Because if you go back and you look at, like, we've had multiple times, because this is something we do every, so many election cycles, is we need to crack down on immigration. And the migrant workers, the ones that come here for a few months during harvest and then go back home and they make some money and whatnot, that pick all the fruits and vegetables that aren't picked very well by like a combine or something.
Right, like avocados and fruits in like San Diego and Southern California.
So they need people, like physical people, to walk through and pull these things off trees and put them in baskets and put them in a truck.
Right.
And then they crack down on the immigration, and a lot of these migrant workers can't come through and do that.
Yeah, it creates a big problem for
and then
a lot of those companies. They cannot survive without the work. They physically would not be able to do it, not because they couldn't like pay people a normal wage that would pay anybody, but because there's literally not enough people that want to do the job.
Right. Like, I wouldn't do it. Fuck that. I pick apples on my own tree, and like 10 minutes into picking apples in my own tree in my backyard, I'm like, yeah, fuck this. It's too much work. Like that's apples.
Also, we have a high school degree plus.
Right.
So it's like we can get a better paying job. So as 90% plus of Americans can do. So they don't need that type of job.
And then when we don't have those people, like literally these companies had their produce rotting in the fields. They couldn't get it to market. And that makes our cost of living go up because now there's less supply. That's less food for us. That's less of the avocado toast where we can eat because, it puts that house another couple of years away that we can afford to eat because all the avocado toast, when the avocado prices go up,
That's
Millennials
right.
can't buy houses anymore, and
And obviously, we can't have as much avocado toast, which is the biggest crime against humanity that has
it,
ever existed.
so maybe
Clearly,
that's why they're doing it. They're just trying to keep us from having avocado. You keep the
They're-
migrants out, the millennials can't eat their avocado
That's right.
toast,
It's
and then the
all a
world will
plot.
be better. Yep, that's my
It's
new.
all coming together now.
There we go. Got another
It's
conspiracy.
all coming together.
So yeah, with lower birth rates, which is coming to a lot of the Western world,
Yeah.
and all of
Yeah.
the fear of not having people to do the jobs and things, that this is the solution. There's lots of other countries that have people that
course.
need jobs. That it's like, hey, come on over and do these shitty jobs we don't want to do. And they're happy, and I don't want to say they're happy to do it, but they are willing and able to do it. And
Right.
Well,
in our clearly we have so many like job openings, right? Like in the you can't drive to any city anywhere in America and there won't be a help wanted sign or like a job postings available. Our unemployment is less than 5%, less than 4% right now. So for people to say like, "Oh, you're going to take our jobs," nobody's taking the jobs that are available right now, much less like taking jobs that people are already existing in. So
so
it's clearly just another rhetoric propaganda type of thing.
and then it's not all just low.
Oh, of course not.
Low skill jobs. I shouldn't say low skill, but you know what I'm trying to say. There's educated jobs, like jobs that require highly specialized jobs. Unspecialized jobs is what I was saying, not unskilled. Unspecialized jobs. There's a lot of specialized jobs that we also can't fill, partially because our education system is so fucking expensive.
Yeah.
Like, who wants to go 6+ figures in debt to be a doctor where you're making, you're going to make good money, but it's still going to take you a decade or two to pay that back if you're lucky. And that's if you don't get sucked into a malpractice suit or something by
if you go into a field that doesn't pay, over $150,000, $200,000 a year. Like if you're working as just like a general practitioner, which is like a huge shortage right now, then it's going to take even longer to get that money back, and that investment becomes much less.
Right. Well, like pharmacists, there's a huge pharmacist because
workers, and I don't think there's any country in the world that's like now
we got enough smart people,
we got enough people.
No, I agree, and yeah, so like that's something. Now we could try to fix our education problem.
even like not even a great one, just like
Yeah.
a Mexican restaurant. Like it's
Every
still better than going to the same old burger joint every single like weekend.
Exactly. Every small town, every place that, houses a lot of this anti-immigration rhetoric, those people go to a Mexican restaurant all the fucking time. And then Chinese restaurants,
Right.
who goes to the Chinese buffet? It's always little towns. Those are the two.
It's true.
Like, you want more of this. Like, sushi's great, people. We need more
There's
sushi
always
restaurants.
a pizza shop everywhere you go because pizza's amazing. But if we didn't have Italian
Right.
immigrants, we would probably not have as much pizza.
And remember, they didn't used to be white, so
Right. Yeah.
they've moved up the scale, but
Right.
and so those are the economic and community benefits, but
Yeah.
that obviously just
The financial benefits of not doing what we're doing is incredible. We're going to be potentially saving and or making billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions over decades.
and we get to eat tacos while we're doing it.
And we get to eat tacos. I'm going home to some quesadillas for dinner tonight. So. Times,
No.
but it does tend to affect in that way.
So I mean, so we have the space,
Right,
and
clearly we have the space. Think of all the small towns that don't have enough people living in them. Like we could avoid all those small towns, all small town America from fading away into oblivion if there was more people there who wanted low cost of living, but just a job in general that's like low pay but low cost of living, and you get space, you get a place to live in America.
And then it's just the right thing to do, you
Right.
know.
We are the richest country, sort of, in the world.
Well, we have the most money.
We have the most money.
A few people have the most money who happen to live in America.
Right.
The addresses of the people with the most money are in the United States,
Yes.
which makes us the richest country.
Morally, what would Jesus do? He'd probably house.
He'd shoot those brown people, obviously.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I just didn't read that part of the Bible.
White Jesus is not a fan of immigrants. He'd be. And stuff.
There's things to see here, just like there are everywhere else.
Right.
So,
But that means that we get money from other countries,
Right.
like when those people come to visit, and so again, and then we get more diversity. We get to experience other people bringing their culture with them.
because there's one thing you can say about white people:
Yeah,
we're culturally pretty fucking boring.
yeah, we tend to be. We got some good things.
We
Like
got
that.
some good things, but like
and bluegrass.
even in Minnesota, which is like a highly Germanic and Swedish Norwegian like area, what do we have culturally that's like significant?
Lutefisk.
We have like Oktoberfest, which is basically we just brought it over with us. So like, but that's like a drinking day, one like for like a weekend a year.
That is our cultural significance in the Midwest. We drink, and now we're creating lots of good beer. That's
Right. All right. Yeah. If you want to say that local breweries is the white people's addition to culture,
yeah.
I'll stand behind that full heartedly.
That's about it. You know,
well, I take that back. We provide something.
we do provide a little bit. Like I said, bluegrass. I think bluegrass and folk and whatever. Like,
True.
Appalachian culture out there. Like a lot of that's some really cool stuff.
Blue jeans and McDonald's.
Yeah, there we go. That's unfortunate.
Well, all right. Well,
yeah.
Let's kind of wrap this one up.
Yeah.
And,
we've been here doing this for a minute.
Is there anything that we want to leave everybody with that what are some of the quick fixes that would just immediately make a difference in righting some of these wrongs?
Oh, I mean, like I said, Reagan did it. We just be like, hey, everybody who's not here legally, you're here legally now.
Sign up to get a number like everybody else.
Yep.
And you can do work things.
Yeah, things that you don't have to worry. We won't kick you out just for being here.
Right.
If we catch you being here, you don't have to look over your shoulder anymore.
Right. Get an ID.
Yep.
Do the things that help you exist in this society and that help the society just work functionally around you being here, because you're here and there's not a really functional way for you to live here in the way that it should actually
get yourself
work
driver's license. So I think that would be the first thing, is just all the people who are already here, just be like, hey, you could be here now and not worry about it.
But Jordan, won't that bring a just tsunami invasion of immigrants who want to come here, some illegally?
I don't know. Ask Reagan.
I don't think immigration went crazy in the 80s
No,
and
it
90s
didn't.
after. I mean, there was a couple spikes.
Oh,
but
and there always is, and that's
ups and
there's a
downs.
lot of facets to that, that are not domestic policy too. Like if war breaks out in South America somewhere, or cartels get overly active, or something like that happens. Speaking of cartels, another big thing to just fix the immigration system is legalizing drugs here in the United States.
Right, at the very minimum, decriminalizing. That's a number one stage to getting people to not take drugs.
Right,
to help them from getting off drugs is to decriminalize that.
But if you legalize it, and I think we've been through this with alcohol, you do prohibition, which all the war on drugs is just prohibition.
Right. It works so well.
It does. So great. Just you tell people don't do that, and they're like, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed doing it before, but since you said no, I just won't.
Yeah, I didn't think that was an option.
It just never occurred to me to just not have a drink.
Yeah, it's weird.
So when you criminalize something like that, during the Prohibition era, we got that in the United States. We had people making illegal liquor, and then we had the mobs and organized crime distributing it. With
like
the
Peaky
drug
Blinders, sending over all that whiskey from England.
So when we did the same thing with the war on drugs. It's just that organized crime is south of the border now,
right?
And it's coming across. So if you're looking to get rid of that has two effects. First of all, you don't have the people smuggling that stuff back and forth across the border, because if it's legal here and you can buy it here and there's no financial incentive.
We get tax revenue from it. It's more easily quantified and safer. Same arguments for marijuana.
Absolutely.
Apply.
But then the other thing is that once those cartels don't have a market, they'll instantly collapse, right? They don't have any revenue coming in.
Yeah, I don't know what else they're, especially, and if you make immigration a lot more legal,
right?
Then, if you want to work, sign up for a work ID, and if you get a job within 6 months or something like that, then you're good. What sort of money is the cartel going to get from drugs and or from people paying them to
smuggle them across the border,
right?
And once the cartels collapse, now you have a much more stable region down there, and less people are going to want to leave.
Yeah, it's almost like fixing the core root of the problems of areas actually saves money and saves lives. It's weird.
Yep. So I think we'd drastically cut down the number of people just looking to immigrate here in the first place. Like, if you don't want them to come, let's take away their reason to come. If that's really what your motivation is, let's make where they live better, because the shit that makes their areas bad is usually us, whether that's us intentionally destabilizing, or, Central and South America,
training, terrorist groups to go fight
fucking Reagan again,
regimes and shit that we don't like.
But
all
then
that shit filters down and it affects people decades later.
And then just not giving their organized crime, their mafias, their cartels a market, so they can't exist.
Right.
And then they're not running amok out there, fucking up everybody, with their racketeering and their violence.
Yeah, and I think if we did something like that, we could help Mexico help themselves and help us and actually help. They got issues with the cartels too.
Yeah.
So they would be very much in favor of something like this, and we could actually get them to help us.
Right. And a lot more, because Mexico's not like a third world country. They're developing, I'd say, but they still have, a lot of first world things. And like a lot of the people coming up from poor countries in Central and South America would probably be happy to immigrate to Mexico too, and never come all the way here, because it's more similar to their culture there than it is here.
Right.
So that would just give them more options. That would be less people that trying to come across the border. And then just streamlining it, make seeking entry easy. Show up, you need refuge, you get here, like you said, give them communities, temporary work permits, so they can go out while we're figuring out what they're going to do while they're here, and just put it all in. Let them come in and and deal with it in a more practical and humane way. And I think
we can help people and make money at the same time.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah, I know. Why would we do that?
Because they're brown.
That is true. That is a major problem.
If they were just not brown, we could totally fix this problem.
Yeah, and just come right on. If they all looked like Melania Trump, then we could chain migration them all here tomorrow. But so yeah, I think we've covered this. We're at a hour and a half, getting here close. So again, thank you to everybody who stuck it out with us.
Yeah, you're incredible. If you listen to the whole thing,
I don't know what compels you to listen to us do this for this long, but we appreciate that you do.
And we hope you enjoyed yourself a little bit.
We really do. We really do. We hope you learn something every once in a while, gain some perspective, some context, some nuance. So that's what we're here for. And once again, thank you always for listening. Follow Off Jawagon and the Let Them Eat Toast channels on TikTok and on the other social medias. We're on Insta and YouTube and all the other stuff. And we will see you next week.
That's right.
All right.
Later, guys.